Fans, if you thought things couldn't get more emotional, think again, because right now, one character's world has just been completely turned upside down. Let's talk about Holden. At this moment, Holden is dealing with something that would shake anyone to their core. He just found out that Shamar Moore's character Malcolm is actually his biological father. And honestly, that's not the kind of news you just process overnight. This isn't just a surprise. This is identity changing. Imagine growing up your whole life believing one story, and then suddenly realizing that everything you thought you knew about your family isn't true. That's exactly where Holden is right now. And the hardest part? He doesn't really have anyone to lean on. In Genoa City, connections mean everything. Family, history, loyalty, those are the things that define people here. But Holden? He's still trying to figure out where he fits in. That's where Claire comes in. Claire has been through something very similar. Not long ago, she was on the outside looking in. She didn't feel like she belonged anywhere. But then, everything changed when she discovered she was part of the powerful Newman family. So when Claire sees Holden struggling, she doesn't just see a guy having a bad day. She sees herself. That emotional connection? It's real. And it's starting to grow stronger. The two of them meet at Crimson Lights, a place where so many important conversations happen. And right away, Claire notices something is off. Holden looks distracted, overwhelmed, like his mind is somewhere else entirely. She doesn't push too hard. Instead, she does something simple but meaningful. She offers to sit with him. Now, that might not sound like a big deal. But in a moment like this, when someone feels completely alone, even a small gesture can mean everything. Holden admits he's unsettled. He doesn't go into every detail right away, but you can tell, this news about Malcolm has hit him harder than he expected. Because deep down, this isn't just about finding a father. It's about everything he missed out on. The childhood moments. The connection. The chance to grow up knowing where he came from. And that's something you can't get back. Claire understands that feeling more than most. She knows what it's like to crave a relationship with a parent, to wonder what could have been. But instead of making the moment heavier, Holden tries to shift things. He doesn't want to stay stuck in that emotional space. So he asks Claire a simple question. Do you want to get lunch? And just like that, the tone changes. It's lighter. More hopeful. Like maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something new. Claire says yes. And that one small decision might end up changing everything between them. Because up until now, their relationship has been complicated. Not exactly serious. More like two people enjoying each other's company without thinking too much about the future. But this? This feels different. Now there's vulnerability. Real emotion. A deeper understanding forming between them. And as they spend more time together, something starts to shift. Holden isn't just the mysterious guy anymore. And Claire isn't just looking for excitement. They're starting to see each other for who they really are. And that's where things start to get interesting. Because when two people connect on that level, when they truly understand each other's pain, past, and struggles, that's when bonds become something much stronger. Something real. But of course, this is Genoa City. And nothing stays simple for long. Coming up next, things take another unexpected turn when Claire meets someone very important in Holden's life, his mother. In The Young and the Restless, relationships rarely stay simple, and just when things start to feel calm, something new always shifts the dynamic. That's exactly what's happening now with Holden and Claire. After their emotional conversation at Crimson Lights, there's a noticeable change between them. It's subtle, but it's there. The tension they once had, the playful, slightly reckless energy, is slowly being replaced by something more grounded. More real. And it all starts with one important step. Claire is about to meet someone who means everything to Holden, his mother, Stephanie. Now think about that for a second. Meeting someone's parent, especially in a situation like this, is never just casual. It's not something you do unless there's at least a little bit of trust, a little bit of importance attached to that connection. So when Holden introduces Claire to Stephanie, it says a lot more than he might even realize. Stephanie, played by Vivica A. Fox, isn't just any mother. She's strong, observant, and deeply protective of her son. She's the kind of person who can read a situation in seconds, and she's definitely going to be paying attention to Claire. And from Claire's side? This moment matters too. Because she's no longer the same person she used to be. There was a time when Claire acted more on impulse, driven by emotion, revenge, and the need to prove something to herself. But now, she's changing. She's starting to slow down. To think differently. To approach relationships with more care. So when she meets Stephanie, she isn't trying to impress in an obvious way. She's simply being herself, calm, respectful, and genuine. And sometimes, that makes the biggest impact. You can imagine the atmosphere during that first meeting. There's a bit of curiosity, maybe a little tension, but also an unspoken understanding that this moment could shape what comes next. Because for Holden, this is two parts of his life coming together. On one side, there's his past, his family, his history, everything he's just started to rediscover. And on the other side, there's Claire, someone who represents where his life could go next. And bringing those two worlds together? That's a big step. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This isn't just about Holden anymore. Claire is also going through her own internal shift. Before, when she first met Holden, things were very different. She was still in a relationship with Kyle, played by Michael Mealer. Back then, Holden represented something exciting, unpredictable, even a little dangerous. He wasn't someone she saw a future with. He was someone she could escape with. At that time, Claire was still trying to figure out who she really was. She was navigating complicated emotions, unresolved anger, and a strong desire to take control of her own story. And part of that story involved uncovering the truth about Audra. Claire was determined to find out what really happened in Los Angeles. That mystery, the need for answers, pulled her closer to Holden in ways that weren't entirely healthy. It wasn't just attraction. It was curiosity. It was intensity. It was unfinished business. But now, that version of Claire is starting to fade. She's no longer chasing chaos. She's looking for something stable. And for the first time, she might be seeing Holden in a completely different light. Not as a distraction. Not as a mystery to solve. But as a person. A real person with pain, history, and vulnerability. And that changes everything. Because when perception changes, feelings often follow. Now, when Claire looks at Holden, she doesn't just see the past version of him, the one tied to secrets and complications. She sees someone who's trying to rebuild. Someone who's struggling, but still moving forward. And maybe, someone she could actually build something with. Meanwhile, Holden is also opening up in ways he never did before. The news about Malcolm being his father didn't just shock him, it cracked something open inside him. It forced him to confront emotions he had been avoiding for a long time. Regret. Curiosity. Even a sense of loss. And instead of shutting down, he's slowly allowing Claire to see that side of him. That's not easy. For someone like Holden, vulnerability doesn't come naturally. But Claire creates a space where he feels like he doesn't have to hide. And that's rare. That's powerful. And it's exactly the kind of connection that can turn something casual into something meaningful. But of course, just because something feels right doesn't mean it will be easy. Because the past isn't done with them yet. There are still secrets, still unresolved tensions, and still people who could complicate everything, especially when it comes to old relationships and unfinished stories. So while this new bond between Holden and Claire is growing stronger, the question is, will it survive what's coming next? Because in Genoa City, every connection is tested. And very soon, Holden and Claire are going to face a moment that could either bring them even closer. In The Young and the Restless, just when things start to feel like they're settling into place, something always shows up to shake the foundation again. And for Holden and Claire, that moment is getting closer. After meeting Stephanie, the dynamic between them has clearly shifted. There's a new layer now, something more serious underneath the surface. It's no longer just casual conversations or emotional support. There's a growing sense that both of them are starting to matter to each other in ways they didn't expect. But here's the thing about Holden. He's still processing everything about Malcolm. Finding out that Malcolm is his biological father didn't just change how he sees his past, it changed how he sees himself. It's like he's trying to rebuild his identity from scratch while still standing in the middle of a life that keeps moving forward. And Claire can see that. She doesn't always know exactly what to say, but she's present. And sometimes, that's more important than advice. She listens when Holden talks about the things he missed out on. The childhood moments he never had. The questions he never got to ask. The feeling of growing up without knowing where he truly belonged. There's a quiet sadness in those conversations. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just real. And Claire relates to that more than she expected. Because she knows what it feels like to be disconnected from your own story, to feel like you're trying to catch up with a life that already moved on without you. That shared understanding is what keeps pulling them closer. But even as their bond deepens, there's still a hesitation. Holden isn't fully sure where this is going. And Claire, for all her confidence, is also starting to question her own feelings. Because this isn't like before. When she was with Kyle, played by Michael Mealer, things felt defined. There was a structure. A clear relationship path, even if it wasn't perfect. But with Holden? It's different. Less predictable. More emotional. More complicated in ways she didn't plan for. And that uncertainty is starting to show. Meanwhile, Holden's connection with his past is still unfolding. The presence of Stephanie, portrayed by Vivica A. Fox, adds another emotional layer to everything he's dealing with. Even though their meeting was calm on the surface, it opened the door to something much bigger. Because now Holden is starting to see what family could look like, but also what he lost by not having it sooner. And that realization doesn't just sit quietly. It affects how he moves, how he thinks, and how he connects with people around him. Especially Claire. Claire is becoming the one person he can talk to without feeling judged. The one person who doesn't try to fix everything, but instead just understands when things don't make sense. And in a place like Genoa City, that kind of connection is rare. But here's where things start to get more complicated. Because as their emotional bond grows, so does the risk of attachment. And neither of them is fully prepared for what that might mean. Claire is beginning to feel something deeper than she expected. It's not just curiosity anymore. It's not just shared history or casual comfort. It's something closer to emotional dependency. And Holden? He's starting to rely on that connection more than he realizes. Every time something in his life feels unstable, he finds himself drawn back to Claire. But emotional closeness always comes with consequences. Especially in a world where past relationships, unfinished business, and hidden agendas are always just beneath the surface. Because Claire still has her own unresolved history. Her past choices. Her emotional baggage. And even though she's moving forward, those shadows don't just disappear overnight. And Holden? He still has more truths to uncover about Malcolm, and about himself. So while things between them may look like they're strengthening, there's also a quiet tension building underneath it all. Like something is about to shift again. And when it does, it could change the entire direction of their connection. Because in The Young and the Restless, nothing stays steady for long. In The Young and the Restless, emotional connections don't just grow quietly, they always move toward a point where something has to give. And for Holden and Claire, that pressure is starting to build. After everything that has happened, the shocking truth about Malcolm, the unexpected emotional conversations, and the meeting with Stephanie, Holden's life feels like it's in a constant state of adjustment. Nothing feels fully stable anymore. And Claire is right there in the middle of it. She's becoming more than just someone he talks to. She's becoming the person he instinctively turns to when things get overwhelming. When his thoughts start spinning. When the weight of his past starts pressing too hard. But that kind of emotional reliance isn't simple. It starts quietly. A conversation here. A moment of comfort there. A shared silence that feels more meaningful than words. And before either of them fully realizes it, it starts to feel necessary. Claire is also feeling the shift. What began as something casual, almost effortless, is turning into something more emotionally loaded. She doesn't fully label it yet, but she feels it. The difference is in how she thinks about Holden when he's not around. It's in the way she reacts when he walks into a room. It's in the way she listens a little more carefully than before. And Holden? He notices too. Because Claire isn't just someone he knows anymore. She's becoming someone who understands him in a way very few people do. But in a place like Genoa City, that kind of closeness always comes with complications. There's history everywhere. Old relationships. Unresolved emotions. People who haven't fully exited each other's lives yet. And that's exactly what makes this fragile. Claire's past with Kyle, played by Michael Mealer, still lingers in the background. Even though that chapter feels like it's closing, it hasn't completely disappeared from her emotional world. And Holden is still trying to fully understand his own identity after learning about Malcolm, portrayed by Shamar Moore. That revelation didn't just change his family tree, it changed how he sees every relationship in his life. Including Claire. Because now, Holden isn't just reacting emotionally. He's questioning everything. Who he is. Where he belongs. And what kind of future actually makes sense for him. And Claire is becoming part of that answer, whether she planned it or not. There's a growing sense that they are no longer just two people passing time together. They are slowly becoming emotionally entangled. Not in a dramatic, explosive way. But in a quiet, persistent way that builds over time. The kind of connection that doesn't need constant words to feel real. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because the deeper it gets, the harder it becomes to step back. Claire starts to notice that she's thinking differently about Holden's presence in her life. It's no longer just comfort. It's expectation. And Holden, without fully realizing it, starts depending on her stability in a way he didn't plan for. But even as their bond strengthens, there's an unspoken tension underneath everything. Because neither of them has fully defined what this is. Friends? Something more? Or something that's still becoming? And in the young and the restless, undefined relationships are often the ones that face the most pressure. Because eventually, something forces clarity. A situation. A truth. A return from the past. And when that moment arrives, it won't just test their connection. It will expose exactly what this bond is built on. And whether it's strong enough to survive outside of comfort zones. For now, though, Holden and Claire are still in that in-between space. Where everything feels possible. In The Young and the Restless, every emotional connection eventually reaches a turning point where feelings can no longer stay unspoken and situations can no longer remain simple. And for Holden and Claire, that moment is slowly starting to form. After everything they've shared, confessions, emotional conversations, and the unexpected family introduction involving Stephanie, their bond has evolved into something neither of them can ignore anymore. It's no longer casual. It's no longer just convenience or comfort. It's something deeper and more complicated. Holden is still carrying the weight of the truth about Malcolm, portrayed by Shamar Moore. That discovery didn't just give him answers, it created new questions. Questions about identity, belonging, and the life he could have had if things were different. And those thoughts don't just disappear. They stay with him. They shape how he sees people. How he reacts. How he connects. And Claire has become one of the only people he feels safe opening up to. But that emotional safety is starting to blur the line between friendship and something more. Claire feels it too. She doesn't say it out loud, but she notices how much space Holden occupies in her thoughts. It's in the small moments, when she's not with him, but still thinking about what he said. Or when she finds herself replaying conversations that didn't seem important at the time, but suddenly feel meaningful. This isn't how things were supposed to go. When Claire first crossed paths with Holden, it was more spontaneous. more impulsive. There was curiosity, attraction, and a bit of emotional chaos mixed in. At that time, she was still tied to her past relationship with Kyle, played by Michael Mealer. Things weren't fully resolved, but emotionally, she was already starting to shift. And Holden represented something different. Something unpredictable. Something alive. But now, that unpredictability has turned into emotional depth. And emotional depth changes everything. Because once you start understanding someone on a deeper level, it becomes harder to see them in any other way. Holden isn't just a distraction anymore. And Claire isn't just someone passing through his life. They are becoming part of each other's emotional landscape. But the problem is, nothing around them is fully stable. Holden is still processing his new reality with Malcolm. Claire is still navigating her own emotional transitions. And both of them are standing in a space where timing is everything, but clarity is missing. And in The Young and the Restless, timing is often what decides everything. Because even the strongest emotional connections can collapse if they're built in the wrong moment. There's also an unspoken truth growing between them. Neither of them has officially defined what they are. They avoid labeling it. They avoid pressure. They keep things in that comfortable gray area where nothing has to be decided too quickly. But that gray area is starting to feel smaller. More intense. More fragile. Because the more time they spend together, the more real it becomes. And real emotions demand clarity eventually. At the same time, outside forces are never far away in Genoa City. Past relationships don't fully disappear. Old decisions always find a way to resurface. And emotional histories have a habit of returning at the worst possible moment. So even though Holden and Claire are currently in a space of connection and understanding, there's always the possibility that something or someone could disrupt it. And when that happens, everything they've built emotionally will be tested. Not just their feelings, but their ability to hold on to them when things get complicated. For now, though, they remain in this delicate balance, where nothing is fully defined.